Good afternoon, advocates. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's third episode of our Alzheimer's Advocacy Academy. I am Nicole Dalsky, the California Government Affairs Manager, and we're being joined by nearly 70 advocates today from Arizona, California, Hawaii, and Nevada. And this group of advocates includes ambassadors, ACT members, and Alzheimer's state champions. And we can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day and out of your week to join us today. Today's title of today's series is the Alzheimer's Association's Programs and Services in Your Community. We're incredibly grateful for your time and hope you find today's episode helpful and engaging. Before I introduce our presenter, I'd like to introduce our public policy and advocacy team. Here's a photo. Great, thanks, James. So we have Susan DeMorris, Jared Giarusso, Ian Ross, James Fitzpatrick, Jessica Rothar, Daniel Gaitan, and Josh Bohannon. So we wanted to just show you guys a quick picture of our team. And then one quick housekeeping item for Q&A. There will be opportunity for Q&A throughout today's webinar. Our presenters will prompt me to see if anyone has entered either a question in the Q&A option that you see there at the bottom of your screen or in the chat. So feel free to use both. I say feel free to use both only because there's occasional glitches on BlueJeans. And so if you notice that your question may not have been asked, feel free to enter it into the chat feature so that everyone can see it. And we'll be sure to ask the presenters. On this slide here is our contact information. So the public policy staff that I mentioned a few seconds ago, their email addresses, and again, throughout any time during today's webinar, if you have any questions or you want to reach out to your public policy lead, that information is right here. I'm always here for you as well. I'm sure you're getting my emails throughout the week, so feel free to reach out to me. And so without further ado, let's see if there's one more slide for me. Yeah, I'm going to pass it along to James Fitzpatrick, who's the Public Policy and Advocacy Director for the Desert Southwest chapter. Welcome, James.
Thanks, Nicole, and everybody, welcome to the third episode of our Advocacy Academy. I am very excited to be your host. As Nicole said, my name is James Fitzpatrick, and I am the Director of Public Policy and Advocacy at the Desert Southwest chapter. Before I begin, I would like to say that I am keeping this 100% real and business on top and pajamas on the bottom. Got to make sure that we're good to go for our weekly conferences that we have virtually now. Today, we're going to be talking about our programs and services, which I feel is really important. I can say in my world, when I started working at the Alzheimer's Association, going and meeting with our federal and state elected officials and their legislative staff, it was very beneficial for me to know what our programs and services were within the communities, because we know that our legislative offices provide programs and services, but they don't always know what the Alzheimer's Association offers. So I'm really excited to be the host for this week's episode. And I would like to start off with this quote from the Lorax. If we don't have volunteers like all of you meeting with our elected officials, providing programs and services, we're not going to be able to do what we can at such a huge level. As one of the largest volunteer health organizations, we're very much dependent on amazing volunteers like yourself, and we're just all grateful for that. I would like to introduce my guests, presenters. The first one is Christine Spencer, known as Spence. She is the regional coordinator for the Aloha chapter that covers 3 islands in Maui County, Hawaii. Before joining the association, she worked as a consultant for the University of Hawaii. She crisscrossed the globe with the United Nations as an international communications officer and worked in South Sudan, Italy, and New York. After 3 years of working in an active civil war zone in South Sudan, she retired from the UN and headed to Maui for a vacation. There she fell in love with a semi-toothless 9-year-old Chihuahua named the Queen of Sheba, and together they found their forever home on Maui. Spence is a graduate from the Fordham University and grew up in Florida. Her greatest inspiration in life was her grandmother, Mimi, who was a doctor, mother of 4, and lived to be 93 years old. And then we have Kinsey McManus, the program director for the Desert Southwest chapter. Prior to coming to the association, she was the services director for the New York affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. During that time, she received an award from the New York State Senate for her development of innovative services and delivery models. Kinsey received her MS in social work from Columbia University and her MA in psychology from Boston University. She's had the privilege to work in a variety of healthcare settings from California to Massachusetts, providing individual and group therapy, healthcare advocacy, and vocational services for adults with disabilities. She's a passionate advocate for involving families in healthcare and brings her knowledge as a family member, clinician, and researcher to her current work. And then we have our special guest, Kathy Maupin, who is the ambassador for District 2 in Nevada for Representative Amode, as well as a support group facilitator, and she is going through the process to become a community educator for the Alzheimer's Association. With that, I will hand it over to Spence and Kinsey.
Thanks, James. Everyone, this is Kinsey. Before we dive into the details, I just wanted to give a quick overview of our suite of services. The more you know about our programs and services, the better resources you'll have when you speak with our elected officials. So to start with, we know that Alzheimer's and related dementias are not Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So it's critically important that we're available 24/7 through our helpline. We also offer a host of education programs to spread correct information to our communities and families. We offer support groups for caregivers and people who are in the early stages of the disease. Our early stage social engagement activities create a space for people to connect. And we, of course, also have safety services. So I'm sure you're sitting there thinking about how many people are really impacted by this disease in your local community and across our 4 states. And wondering how it is that the staff at the association can provide so many different types of programs and services to those impacted. So the reality is that staff at the association cannot do it alone. And frankly, we don't. We have over 650 talented volunteers who help us provide community education, facilitate our support groups, and lead our early stage activities. Some of our volunteers specialize in outreach to Spanish-speaking communities and faith-based communities. Some are incredible representatives of us at large health fairs. So not only are they helping us facilitate support, but also to spread awareness of the organization. If it wasn't for our volunteers, we would not come close to supporting the people who need us. So now I'm going to pass it over to Spence, and she's going to speak in a little more detail about our helpline and our education programs.
Thank you. Aloha, ambassadors. So for those of you who may not be familiar with our core programs, I'd like to first introduce you to our 24/7 helpline. And this is not to be confused with a hotline, because I promise you it is so much more. Our helpline is staffed 365 days of the year by master's level professionals and clinicians. So they're available to answer any question that a caregiver, a person living with the disease, or anybody really can call and get any information that they need. Our helpline is available in 200 languages. You heard that correctly, 200 languages, and some of those include Arabic, Chinese, Finnish, French, Portuguese, Russian. The list goes on and on and on. The good news is there's quite a few different ways that people can access our helpline. The first way is to call our toll-free number, which is 1-800-272-3900. And that's really just the quick way to get connected. But for people who may be more comfortable connecting online, we also have a live chat feature on our website, alz.org. And you go to search our helpline. There's a little green button on the top of the page that says live chat, and you can just type in any questions that you might have there. I just tested it out the other day, and they responded almost immediately. So it's a really great service. In addition to that, on the website, you can also fill out a form online and submit that as well if you have any questions, and they'll be answered promptly that way. Additionally, we have our helpline available for anybody who might be hearing impaired or having challenges hearing, and that's available through a teletype service with a number that they can call with their device there. So as you can see, our helpline is available in many different ways, 24/7, every day of the year. And I think it just really shows how much we care and how much we just want to be there for the people in our communities. So the great thing about the helpline is if somebody needs some follow-up or they need some additional support, the helpline consultant can go ahead and route that call to a local programs coordinator on the ground in that person's community. And then that coordinator can provide a service that we call a care consultation. And now this service is just a very individualized and personal consultation with either a caregiver or a person living with the disease where they can really ask any questions they might have. We can provide some emotional support. We talk about some of the challenges they might have in their caregiving, what resources they might need, and how can we give them some information and refer them to some local resources that are available to them. So that is our helpline and our care consultations. I did want to mention that in the time of what's going on right now, our helpline is really a vital source for people to call instead of making that trip to the doctor or to the hospital. I always say, you can ask any question to any of our consultants. And right now, when we're trying to stay home and trying to stay safe, if people can't reach their primary care physician for any reason, I say go ahead and call the helpline and see if we can maybe prevent going in and exposing ourselves in the doctor's office or hospital. So it's a great resource right now, especially in times of crisis. So I'm going to move along to our education programs, and if there's any burning questions out there, I'll save them just for the end. Our education programs are really great classes. We offer a variety of classes on a range of different topics. They are about an hour to an hour and a half long, and their classes are for family caregivers, professionals, the general public. They suit really a wide range of audience. And the really great thing, I think, about our classes is variety. And a caregiver can take the Know the 10 Signs class, or maybe it's in the end of their journey or closer to the end where they may be having problems communicating with their loved one who's no longer the strategy class, which has been helpful in helping to mitigate some of these daily challenges that our caregivers face every day. So the classes have been available online. We are volunteer-led. We couldn't do this without our volunteers, so our classes have always been there to enroll in, and you simply would just go to our website, alz.org/education, and you can just hit the enroll button. I know we have a picture of it on our next slide, and it's a very simple way just to get enrolled and learn from some of these different classes that we offer. The curriculum is, like I mentioned, on a wide range of topics, and it's really well developed and based on research. So go to alz.org, trainingalz.org, you just start your account, enroll now, and then you just add the different classes into your cart. I believe there's about 14 that you can choose from. So the exciting thing about this time with our program staff here in the Aloha chapter is we really are providing all of these classes virtually now, and we're training our volunteers to train seniors in our community how to get online, and that's a really new and exciting thing for us here. So it's a great resource to check out our e-learning, and then when things get back to normal, we have a lot of classes all over the country. At any given time, you can find one of our classes. And how you do that, you just go onto our website and you check our Community Resource Finder, CRF. All you do is type in your zip code and it'll bring up the different events and classes and support group and all of the different programs that we're offering in your community based off of your zip code. So that is the majority of information that I'd like to share on our helpline, our care consultation, and our education programs. Nicole, I thank you kindly for checking the chats. Were there any burning questions, or should I kick it off?
No, yeah, thank you so much. We do have a few questions, actually. The first one comes from Laura, I believe it's Vitkus. She'd like to know regarding the helpline, is the helpline available in American Sign Language?
You know, that's a really good question, and I will double check and get you the answer for that. I know that the teletype service is a great option, but I will have to double check to see as far as American Sign Language. But we can definitely get back to you on that. It's a great question.
Sounds good. And then the next one we have is from Jo Ellen Bauer. Her question was, did you say it is staffed by master's degree trained and higher? Are there volunteers? Are they volunteers or just staff? So question about those that are answering the calls.
Yes, so master's level, they're all highly trained professionals on there. It is our staff, we have them all over the country and a few different headquarters for our call centers. And yes, they are regarded as highly professional, well, educated master's level consultants on the other end.
Great, so those were the two questions. And then, of course, following today's webinar, we'll be sure to send them some helpful information, all of the details that you just so greatly provided for us. Maybe we can include that in the follow-up email to everyone so that they have it. Thank you so much. I think there was one more. Oh, I do have one from Donald Cuman. Thanks, Donald, for asking this one. His question is, what are the most common topics asked on the helpline? Do you have any variation or main topics?
I do know that I wrote down kind of the main three topics, and a lot of times people call for crisis intervention. So they'll call when they're really in a situation where they need some support during a crisis. Also, we have people who call in a lot just with symptom questions. Things that they may not be sure about, new behaviors or things they're unfamiliar with seeing. And really just to help, a lot of times it's to help to plan for future crisis planning. So a lot of times it's regarding crisis when people call, but we get also a lot of calls with just some general questions and even just to get a little bit of emotional support and talk to somebody. Okay. Thank you so much for the questions, everyone. And I am going to kick it over to Kenzie, our program director in Desert Southwest.
Thanks, Spence. So next I'm going to talk about our support group. Support groups are a space where caregivers and people in the early stages of Alzheimer's can come together to talk about what's going on, to vent about challenges, problem solve together, and share successes. So typically our support groups meet in person. They usually meet either an hour and a half long. Some meet as frequently as weekly, but every group generally meets at least monthly. And it's really about people coming together in their community, and it's an opportunity to also share important resources. So like which physicians really get it, or tips and tricks to navigate the health system. For those of you, if you've never had the chance to join a support group, really of any kind, not even within the association, you might be surprised to learn that many of us find the most rewarding part of going to a support group is that we're able to share our hard-earned knowledge and experience in hopes that it'll ease the journey for us. The ability to provide mutual support can really go a long way. So at the association, we do have two different types of groups. One is specifically for caregivers, and the other is for people in the early stages of Alzheimer's or related dementia, and that can also include their care partner. Typically, if care partners are included, the group may meet together initially And then for the majority of the time, the groups do meet separately. Our groups meet, as frequently as I said, at least weekly, but some it's at least once a month. So because Alzheimer's doesn't discriminate, it's really important that our groups also do reflect the diversity of our community. As a result, some of our groups do have some type of specialization. They can be offered in a language other than English. Of course, when you look at our 4 states, Spanish is often the most common language that a group will be offered in if it's other than English. It can be about a specific type of dementia. We have groups specifically just for Lewy bodies, or it can focus on families dealing with younger onset. As a result of COVID-19, our groups no longer meet in person. And while our groups certainly have the capacity to move to telephone-based, it was really new for us. But I have to say, within a couple of weeks, our groups all started moving virtual. Specifically in the Desert Southwest chapter, 57 of our 62 groups have moved to the phone. And some, now that they're hitting their pace with telephone, are looking to actually move to video. For those who aren't meeting by phone, our facilitators have been reaching out individually to regular group members to make sure that they're connected to our services, to explore the option of maybe attending a different support group. But we really could not have done this without our volunteers. The vast majority of our support groups are facilitated by volunteers. They go through training with us at the association, and they are the backbone of support groups. So moving from in-person to telephone format wasn't easy, but they all really jumped in feet first, and we can't be more appreciative of that. I'll answer questions about support groups after I touch on our early stage activities. So James, we can move to the next slide. Thanks. So the other piece that we don't maybe talk as much or enough about is the reality that Alzheimer's and related dementias are highly isolating. Even family and friends and other loved ones, they don't always know how to respond, and even with the best intentions can end up distancing. So we often do see that people, including our physicians, begin to dismiss the person living with dementia and start speaking directly to their care partner. People living with the disease often feel like sometimes they are kind of treated as though they're not even present in the moment. The reality is that not everyone is comfortable with joining a support group. They may not be interested in attending a formal presentation. And we knew that there just had to be another way for us to connect to each other. And this is how we do it through our early stage activity. It's a great place for people to connect in a safe and supportive environment, but while also doing something fun. And we were kind of joking yesterday when we were prepping that, early stage activities are kind of where we think like the sky's the limit. If you can dream it, it can happen. So when we talk about what types of activities we do, it can include things like a nature walk, a picnic at a local lake or at a local park. It could be an arts group, so maybe creative writing. We have some music jams, and it can be things like going to the movies or the zoo or going to a museum. So I'm sure as I'm saying this, you're all thinking, most of that does not comply with the rules of social distancing. And you're right. It actually has been quite a challenge for us to move these services virtual, but it's happening. So, we have people who are joining by video to do cafe hours. We're working on getting the band back together for video and music jam. Our efforts are really in the works to keep these activities up and running in our new normal, because as a disease that's already isolating, to add social distancing to the mix just really makes these that much more critical. And we're also working across the country to collaborate and share ideas how other chapters have been able to get their early stage activities back on board. So it's, I think to Spence's point too, for us, while this has been a real challenge to figure out how to move virtual, and there's been a lot of a huge steep learning curve for all of us, staff, as volunteers, as the families that we serve, I think in the long run, we will see benefits of abilities to reach people that otherwise maybe have not been able to come in person for groups and for our other types of services to actually start getting connected to us. So while this has been an incredible challenge, I do think that there are still some silver linings here, and that we'll certainly see an expansion of our services even when we return to in. So I guess we'll take a couple of minutes to see if there are any specific questions about support groups and early stage activities.
Yeah, so we have some general comments, commenting on how wonderful the caregiver groups have been. Thank you, Pam Montana. She commented that in their caregiver group, we meet weekly with Judy on Fridays. It's been great. And then others, or pardon, I'm saying caregiver, it should be support groups. And Terry Simmons commented that she doesn't know what she would have done without the support group when my mother was diagnosed. So thanks so much for sharing. And I apologize, there's a bit of a background construction happening, so I apologize if you all can hear that. And then Andre Rivers had a specific question for our Northern California team, but I'm going to put him in touch with Jessica Rothar and our programs team so that we can better answer his question. It was around LGBT caregiver groups in the Northern California area. But other than that, those are the only questions we have right now. Thank you.
Great. So now I'm going to pass back to James, who's going to talk a little bit about our safety services. Thanks, James.
We do know that 6 in 10 people with dementia will wander. And one of the programs that the Alzheimer's Association offers.
Pardon me, James.
Yes?
Sorry to interrupt. You were on mute, so we didn't catch the first piece of your sentence there.
I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Just so all of you know, all I can see is the PowerPoint. I cannot see anything else. So I do apologize if I put myself on mute. What I was saying is, you know, as advocates, we're no strangers to ensuring that there's legislation such as silver alerts, first responder training, mandated first responder training. And a lot of you may not know that the Alzheimer's Association does have 2 programs that they offer. One is for wandering. We do know that 6 in 10 people with dementia will wander. So the association has a program called Medical Alert Wandering Support. And what this offers is a membership plan for 24/7 wandering support. Gives you a national emergency response service for individuals living with Alzheimer's disease and other dementia, and it provides them medical emergency response. We do partner with the Medical Alert Foundation. A lot of you may be familiar with Medical Alert. It's the bracelets, necklaces, their shoe ties. What I think is amazing about this program is not only does it connect the association if there is a wandering incident with the client, but it also provides jewelry, not just for the person with dementia, but for their caregiver as well. We do know a lot of times caregivers, just due to life, have to leave the home. Emergencies do happen, and the jewelry does allow medical response to see that somebody at home has Alzheimer's or a related dementia. What happens is when an incident comes into Medical Alert's emergency response team, they collect all of the relevant information, they generate a report, and they distribute it to the local police as well as other authorities such as the emergency room. And then they continue to follow up until it's resolved. And they follow up with the association as well. We also provide an online first responder training. You can go and see the first responder training through the process that Spence talked about through our e-learning. This training in no way alters any of our 4 states' hard work to ensure that there is mandatory first responder training within our states. The Alzheimer's Association does offer this free online training, but it does not diminish any of the work or support that any of you have been providing to ensure that there's legislation in your state. But it is a great intro for first responders. And with that, before I move on, I will take any questions pertaining to our safety services, if there are any.
I don't see any at this time, James. But we'll keep you looped in should any come in.
Perfect. Great. Then I would like to introduce Kathy Maupin. Kathy Maupin was born, raised, and educated in Reno, Nevada. She graduated from UNR with a BS degree in elementary and special ed and a master's of education in elementary education and reading. She married and eventually left teaching to raise 4 children. After the death of her stepfather in 1997, Kathy began a 22-year journey as a caregiver for her mother, who was then in the early stages of Alzheimer's. She found the Alzheimer's Association through a friend in 2005 and began attending a support group. Several years later, she was asked to become a facilitator for the group, becoming a volunteer, an advocate, and eventually an ambassador to Congressman Mark Amadei. She is currently working to become a community educator, and I would like to welcome Kathy to the episode. How are you doing, Kathy?
And I'm fine. Good to be here today.
Great, and thank you. Can you tell everybody, basically, the last 2 weeks we talked about storytelling. Can you tell everybody how you got connected with the association? What's your story?
Well, you covered a lot of it in my introduction. Alzheimer's was not a word I knew. I didn't know about the Alzheimer's Association. I began taking care of my mother after her husband died, and I was concerned about her. I didn't know what was wrong with her, and nobody I talked to knew what was wrong, and her doctor kept saying she was fine. So it took 7 years for me to finally get her diagnosed and get myself to the Alzheimer's Association to get some help to learn about this disease and to calm down about all of the things that were happening in our lives. It was a very stressful time. The Alzheimer's Association was such a wonderful gift to me at that point in my life. And it was so much fun going to support groups. One of my elderly friends recommended it. I thought I'd be a one and done, that I didn't think I was a support group person. That was 15 years ago, and I'm still going to support group, still getting a great deal of support and love from all of the people in that group. It's been an amazing journey. One phone call literally changed my life and sent me in a new direction.
Kathy, can you elaborate on why you thought you were not a support group person?
I had never been to a support group. I just thought people would go there and complain, and I didn't know that I would get so much education, that I would find out about services, that I would learn so much more about the disease, that I would learn coping techniques, that I would develop friendships. That just wasn't anything that I thought would happen. But that first group, that very first day when I was so nervous and so scared and thinking I don't belong here, the people were so wonderful. The great thing about people in support groups is their selflessness, their caring, their absolute love. They're willing to give up their lives basically to take care of someone they love, and I just didn't expect that. So I'm really happy I went, and I encourage everyone to try out a support group.
What was your experience being a support group attendee to being a support group facilitator?
Actually, it just sort of flowed naturally. I had been in the support group for 3 or 4 years, and I was asked by the director at that point in time if I would consider taking the group. I knew everyone in group. It felt a little awkward the first day transitioning from being just a member to now being a facilitator, but I was still a caregiver to my mother. So it only changed slightly in that I just sort of ran the meeting, but I was still more in my mind a member of the group because my mom was still alive. So it was an easy transition, and everyone who was in the group accepted it. So it was it was a really nice transition, all in all.
How was your transition from being a sole program volunteer? What was it like? What was the process, and what was it like becoming an advocate for the association?
Well, after I had transitioned into being a support group facilitator, about a year later, the director came to me again asking if I would consider becoming an advocate. And I really didn't know what an advocate was at that point in time. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So that was a really gradual transition into becoming an advocate. But I really liked doing the two. I felt that I became the voice for the people in my support group who often said they had no voice. So I could take their concerns, their issues, and speak about them when I accompanied people to visits with our congressional representatives or at the state legislature. So again, it was sort of a learning experience. As the years passed, I hope I got better at it, but it was a good transition.
How was that knowledge of working with elected officials and their legislative staff? How was it for you to know the programs and services that were offered out there when you were conducting your meetings? When you conduct meetings?
I've always made sure that I take a packet of information every time I go on a meet, and I include in it all of the services, the statistics for our state. It's, I think, important to have our elected officials have a broad view of Alzheimer's and not a very narrow view. I want them to know that this is a place where if their offices are contacted, they will have the information to pass on to those constituents and that they can contact the Alzheimer's Association. I think that's one of the difficult things is I think there are still a lot of people who don't know about the Alzheimer's Association and the services that it provides. And so part of advocacy is informing our elected representatives so that they have that information readily available in their offices should they be contacted.
So you're currently still a support group facilitator. Has your group gone virtual, telephonic?
The last two meetings we have met over the phone. Next week, we meet on Wednesdays. So next week we will have our first meeting visually. It's something that they really wanted. My group is close. They're very supportive of each other. They see each other outside of group. We have regular luncheons that we do all together. So they miss each other a whole lot. And they really, really wanted to go to the visual aspect of this so that they could see each other again. I think it's sad that this virus has interfered so much with our support groups because my group is very huggy, very hands-on with each other, and they are really lonely and missing each other. Many of them are spending 24 hours, 7 days a week with their loved ones now, and they're finding it much more difficult with the services that have been shut down to actually participate in support groups. So I'm hoping maybe with us going to visual that we can get some of them back online and see each other. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm very optimistic about it.
I look forward to hearing about that from you. Without breaking confidentiality, what are some of the themes or norms that you have heard over the years as a support group facilitator providing support to individuals impacted by Alzheimer's and dementia?
I think one of the most common themes is, first of all, people don't know what they're dealing with, so they need the education, and they're very, very grateful for that, especially the comments that other people in the group, maybe who are more experienced or have been in the group longer, make to them. So there's a lot of education that needs to be done about the disease. One of the common themes, too, is that this seems to affect not just the person who's the caregiver, but the families. And many of them have issues with families. The families are not supportive of the person caring for their loved one. So that family support is missing. So that's a huge factor in why they end up coming to support group. So I'd say those are the two main issues. There are a lot of specifics, not understanding, for example, hallucinations or just in general specific behaviors that they don't know what to do about. One family's having issues right now with their loved one. When they take him out, obviously they're not taking him out anymore, but with this virus, but he was sort of coming on to all the women he would see in restaurants. So there are a lot of sexual issues they had to deal with. So those are some of the things that we deal with in the support group that are pretty common.
I will say with my experience, my grandmother did pass away of the disease about 12 years ago now. And I've been with the association for 5.5 years. Something that's interesting for me is my fault. I was not a caregiver for my grandmother. They lived 20 miles away. I would visit them. My dad was one of the primary caregivers with my grandfather. And to this day, he still does not identify as a caregiver. He just looked at it as, that's my mother. That's what I was expected to do. How would you handle something like that with somebody coming into a caregiver support group that doesn't identify as a caregiver?
I'm trying to think if I have anyone who is that way. I think almost everyone in my group identifies as a caregiver. All of them, I think, feel that it is a responsibility that they have. Most of them are very, very happy to do it. Many of them have moved from out of state to Reno as part of that responsibility, wanting to give back. Often they say, well, my parents raised me. It's my responsibility to take care of them now. So I don't know that I have anyone who really doesn't identify as a caregiver.
I'm going to put you on the spot for this last question.
Okay.
What do you like more, programs or advocacy?
Oh, that's easy. I really love my support group. Of all of the things that I do for the Alzheimer's Association, that's my favorite. I just feel like I'm surrounded by angels. And because my journey was so long, my mother had this disease for over 25 years. She just passed away a little less than a year ago. So for all of these years that I've been in a support group, 15 this year, I've been a caregiver. And so I felt hugely supported by these angels who are so filled with kindness and selflessness and support. So that is what I really love the best. I'm a little bit shy still about advocacy. I'm not good at asking for things, but I do view it as a challenge and I enjoy it. But caregiving is, my caregiver support group is really my first love.
Great. Thank you for taking your time out. Thanks for all that you do for the association and those living in Reno and Nevada. With that, Nicole, we will open it up to questions for Kathy or anything else pertaining to the topic today.
Great, thanks, James. I don't see any questions at this time, although some may be typing them in as we speak. I think there's just more so general comments about what we've just heard regarding support groups and that how helpful they've been. Yeah, we thank you so much for sharing that, both James and Kathy. Give it just maybe a few more seconds to see if any more come in.
Perfect.
James, you saw the one from, I think it's Ginger, regarding the support group. She's a support group coordinator for Desert Southwest chapter. I think you responded to that one.
I haven't responded to anything because all I can see is a big purple question mark.
Oh, okay, so your name popped up, so it looked like that you responded, but I'll read it in any case. Ginger mentioned, she commented, James, I am a support group coordinator for the Desert Southwest chapter, and I want to acknowledge the wonderful support we get from Martha at the chapter. You never feel like you are out there alone.
Thank you, Ginger. I'm pretty sure Kinsey is beaming right now because Martha is one of her staff members. Uh, I will say that, you know, with us doing these advocacy academies, we really want to build on ensuring that you all have the skills and needed information to be the best advocates that you can be. With this disease, with everything that the Alzheimer's Association does, it's overwhelming, and trying to memorize all of it. I'm 5.5 years and I still learn things on an ongoing basis. I think that it's great that we have a lot of volunteers that cross all of our pillars. We get a lot of people that come to walk, and then we don't see them again until the next year. And we really want to ensure that people that want to volunteer have those opportunities year-round. And programs and advocacy are two of the largest areas where somebody can. Kinsey and Spence and Kathy, do you guys have any closing remarks before we hand it back over to Nicole?
James, I have a few more comments. I thought I would just read them to you since I know you're not able to see them. One says, thank you, James. Thank you, James, for stating that. I am a daughter that works with my support caregiver staff and responsibility for medical appointment schedules. I never thought that I never think of myself as a caregiver, but definitely my mom's voice. And I find that comment, thank you, so powerful. I guess many advocates, they think about perhaps that's a different connotation when you hear the word caregiver, and it can be positive, it can be negative, but whatever it is to you, that's the beauty of embracing what that is. And so hearing that this person is simply her mom's voice, I think that's a perfect description, kind of to your point, James. But I just wanted to read that out. And then Terry commented, this is exactly how I felt. I was my mother's voice. And Andre Rivers commented, I just want to say how much I love the classes and early stage activity. Thank you so much, everyone, for putting in your comments in the event chat. And I'll hand it over to James.
Well, actually, Nicole, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
No problem. Well, thanks again, everyone, for your questions. And moving to the next slide here, just a quick reminder. Last week, we asked advocates to take action. You may have seen an email come through from either your public policy staffer or from our national team. So we asked advocates to take action on our new advocacy campaign, encouraging Congress to incorporate 3 Alzheimer's Association priorities in the 4th COVID-19 relief package. Many of you, thank you so much, stepped up to make this the most successful start to an advocacy campaign in years, but more work remains. And so we are still continuing to ask advocates to take action on this front. And so if you haven't done so, we'll be sure to send the link and details out in our follow-up email after today's call. But we just wanted to make that plug one more time to you all on today's presentation. And then, of course, just rounding out or concluding today's call with our upcoming Advocacy Academy episodes. So we have a few more left, and our next one is on April 29th, Alzheimer's Research 101. So please join us for the next one. We look forward to hearing from you and hearing your questions again, and then there's the rest following in May and June. So please continue to join us, and we're so grateful for your time, everyone. James, I didn't know if you wanted to wrap us up here.
Just want to thank everybody for taking their time. I'm appreciative of every one of you, even though I don't know every one of you. We do know that there were so many things planned over the last couple of months that we wanted to do, such as go to forum, have ongoing visits with our state and federal legislators. But the fact that you guys are all taking your time out of the day to participate in this weekly, we're just so grateful. And on behalf of myself and the other policy staff and all of the volunteers and all of the people impacted by Alzheimer's and dementia, thank you very much, and we will see you next week.